That's where connection lives, in those small in-between moments. Welcome to Life and Love by Design. I'm life and relationship coach Odette Coronel. This podcast is for individuals and couples who are done living on autopilot, who are ready to understand the patterns shaping their relationships, their choices, and their sense of self, and redesign them with purpose and intention. Here, we don't just talk about what's hard. We name what's actually happening beneath it and what to do about it. And if you start recognizing yourself or your relationship in these conversations, know that this is the exact work that I do with my private coaching clients, individuals and couples who are ready for real change. Because a meaningful life and connected relationships don't happen by default. They're designed. So let's begin. Hi, welcome back to Life and Love by Design, the podcast where we talk about how to live and love with purpose and intention and not by default. I am life and relationship coach Odette Coronel, and today we're talking about something that I see all the time in relationships, and it's something that most couples don't even realize is happening until they feel really far apart. And we're talking about what happens when you live together and maybe even work from home together, but you stop connecting. And it starts very subtly. You are in the same space together, but you're just passing each other. No real eye contact, no affection, no intentional moments. And before you know it, it feels like your partner is just like part of the furniture in the room. And today I'm going to show you how I helped a couple that I worked with completely shift that dynamic without changing their entire lives, without changing their schedules, and without needing more time. Because what they learned was that the problem wasn't time, it was really about emotional presence. And once they learned how to reconnect in small, intentional ways throughout the day, everything in their relationship started to shift, including intimacy, communication, emotional safety, all of that. So if you've been feeling emotionally distant from your partner, even though you're physically together a lot, then I think this episode is going to land very deeply for you. So I think in 2020, during the pandemic, especially, things really started to shift in relationship because a lot of couples were both working from home. They were spending time together. So our dynamic was changing, our patterns were changing. And I started seeing this come up in a lot of the couples that I started working with, where they were spending a lot of time together, yet they felt very emotionally distant and disconnected. And one of the clearest examples I have of this was a lovely couple that I worked with, and they had two beautiful children and one on the way, and they both worked from home. And they both took care of their children from home. And nothing was really wrong, but they were around each other all day long. And, they were managing life and responsibilities and the kids and the home and their jobs and everything. But emotionally, they just felt kind of really far apart and disconnected. And I remember that what she told me was, that she didn't understand why she felt so totally unseen by her husband, even though they literally can see each other all day long. And they were literally in the same house. And yet she felt like she could probably disappear and he wouldn't even notice. So what was interesting is that when I asked her what it was that she felt that she needed the most, she didn't say that she needed, more date nights or some big, romantic getaway or anything like that. What she said was that she needed for her husband to look at her, to really look at her, to acknowledge her, to give her a hug. That's it. It's really not that complicated. It's not that dramatic. It's all about attention and connection. So then when we brought this up to her husband, his response was really different, which was really interesting. And what he said was, I don't get it. We're together all day long and I'm working, I'm providing for our family, I'm doing all the things that she asks me to do around the house. And this is really where that disconnection happens. Even though they were living in the same house and in the same space, they were having two very different emotional realities. So he was not feeling that disconnection in the same way that she was experiencing it. And this is what I want you to understand if you're in a similar dynamic. Being physically present is not the same as being emotionally available. And especially when couples work from home together, it's amplified because there's no actual separation between work and home. There's no moment of reuniting or saying goodbye and then reuniting. So work mode and relationship mode starts to kind of blend together. So what starts happening is that you stop greeting each other. You stop acknowledging each other and you stop checking in emotionally. So you kind of like become like roommates almost or cohabitants instead of partners. And then slowly, right, the intimacy doesn't disappear overnight, but it slowly starts to dissolve through the absence of these small moments. So with this couple, it started very simple. I didn't tell them to overhaul their entire life. I didn't tell them to, schedule more date nights. I started with little micro moments of reconnection. I asked them to just implement three very simple things. The first thing is to acknowledge each other whenever they're entering a shared space, even if it's just, eye contact or just, hey, I see you. If you're doing all the right things, you're showing up, you're holding it together, you're being capable and responsible, and yet something in your life and relationships or your marriage still feels off, then give me a few seconds of your time because this message is for you. Relationships don't usually fall apart because of one big event. More often, it's the small everyday moments when we stop being intentional, or we stop really listening, or we stop choosing connection. Those are the things that create distance over time. I work with thoughtful, high functioning individuals and couples who aren't broken, but they're feeling disconnected or misaligned or just wondering how they got here. In my coaching, we slow things down. We try to understand what's happening beneath the surface. We identify the patterns that are shaping your relationships and your choices, and then we intentionally design what comes next. So if you're listening and you're thinking, this feels like me, that's not an accident. I offer a complimentary relationship and life alignment audit. It's a focused 45-minute conversation where I'm going to help you gain clarity and identify what comes next. You can book your session by visiting odettecornell.com. I would love to connect with you. The second thing is a 10-second physical connection reset. So, a hug, for example, not rushed, not transactional, just presence. So you want to physically touch each other for 10 seconds. And the third thing is at least one emotional check in per day. So, not about logistics, not about what's on your to do list for the day, just simply, how are you actually feeling? And I remember for this couple, at first it felt a little bit awkward and unnatural. I remember that he told me that it kind of felt forced for him. And she even said that it felt like this was too simple to even make a difference or to even matter. And that's okay. But you know what? They stuck with it. And within a couple of weeks, she started to feel seen. And he started noticing something very important. He didn't realize how much he had also been craving that connection. It was just in a different way. He didn't recognize it. And he didn't have the language to express it either. So I want to pause here and ask you something. Do you notice this happening in your relationship? Do you feel like you and your partner are sharing space, but you're not actually sharing presence? And if you are, I want you to understand something really important. Most disconnection does not come from a lack of love. It actually comes from a lack of intentional contact. And what shifted for the couple that I was working with and their dynamic, it wasn't more time together. They were already spending lots and lots of time together. It was how they were being together. Because you can sit next to someone and still feel really emotionally alone. But you can also have a 30-second moment of presence that really completely changes the emotional tone of your entire relationship. And this is what I help my clients rebuild. Not bigger gestures, but just consistent emotional reconnection. I remember I had another client that was in a very similar situation, and she felt like she had to chase her partner for affection. and she had to ask for it. And when she did, it almost felt like he was doing her a favor by giving her affection. And when we started to unpack that, it wasn't that he didn't care or that he didn't love her or that he didn't want to give her affection. It was just that they had completely lost the rhythm of connection in their daily life. So again, we worked on rebuilding what I call those micro moments of relational presence. And that's what changed everything. And one of the biggest mistakes that couples make is waiting for big moments to reconnect. They wait for the date night, or they wait to go on vacation together, or they wait for the weekend, or they wait for, a season in their life when they're not going to be as busy. But connection really doesn't live in those big moments. And by the way, of course, there's nothing wrong with those big moments. You should absolutely plan for those big moments. They matter as well. But what happens every day in that in between time really matters the most. That's where connection lives, in those small in between moments. So I want you to ask yourself, especially if you live and work in the same home as your partner, when was the last time that the two of you actually saw each other during the day? Not just kind of functioning, but emotionally. Not, what are we having for dinner? Or did you pick up the kids? Or what time are you finishing work? That's not what I'm talking about. What I mean is, how are you really? I'm talking about a feeling. I'm talking about presence. I'm talking about intention. So, if this is resonating with you and you're noticing that you and your partner have slipped into this type of dynamic, this is exactly the kind of work that I do with individuals and with couples inside of my coaching program. And we don't just talk about communication, we really rebuild emotional connection from the inside out, starting with the relationship with yourself first, because, of course, as I always say, the relationship with yourself is the foundation for any relationship that you're going to have in your life. Because here's the truth, the way that you relate to yourself sets the blueprint for how you experience connection with other people. If you're disconnected from yourself, it becomes very easy to tolerate disconnection in your relationship without even realizing that it's happening. But when you start coming back to yourself, you start to really notice what you need and you start asking for it and you start creating a different relational experience for yourself. So, if you want to explore more of these conversations, you can go back and listen to some of my prior episodes of the podcast. Make sure that you subscribe, like, and share an episode that resonates with you. And in some of these episodes, I really go a little bit deeper on relationship dynamics, on attachment, on emotional patterns. So make sure that you take a listen to those. And if you're ready for more personalized support, you can always reach out to me for a private conversation. The link is right in the show notes. So I want to leave you with this. You don't need a completely different relationship. You need a different way of showing up in the one you already have. And it starts with small moments of presence. Thanks for listening. And until next time, remember that your life and your love are yours to design. If today's episode described you or your relationship, then this is your moment. You don't need more information. You need a new way of living, choosing, and relating. And that's the work I do with individuals and couples. If you're ready to stop repeating the same patterns and start designing your life and relationships intentionally, visit the link in the show notes and book a complimentary relationship and life audit. Remember, your life and your love are yours to design.